back, friends. You are listening to In the Company of Charity podcast. My name is Sister Liz Schoberg, and I am joined, as always, by my host in crime, Sister Elizabeth Grime. Hello, Sister Elizabeth. How are you?
Sister Liz, I'm doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there. You know, it's these trying times of COVID-19 here.
Yeah. So are you sheltering in place? Are you on a pause, or what are you doing right now?
Cameron County, Texas is under a shelter in place at this moment in history. And I just want to share with the folks at home that we try to go to our local HEB, which is the supermarket down here, huge in Texas. They're everywhere. And they have implemented some lines so that people are not crowding everything and taking everything. And so truly grateful for HEB and their staff for their crowd control and caring about the people. They're disinfecting everything. They put limits on what people can take, so there's not this whole like hoarding situation. So that is one little shining star, bright light of this whole thing, is that here's a company that really cares about the community so that everybody can get what they need.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I was listening to the last podcast and heard our introduction. I sounded so sad, I said, oh my goodness, gloomy. But I realize now it was a sad day. We found out that our state in New York, and that this whole state was shutting down, non-essential people, whoever they are, and then you begin to realize lots of people are essential, like grocery workers and pharmacists and gas stations, and of course the heroic and amazing medical people, all of the first responders and all these people. Really, I mean, they're in harm's way. I mean, this thing is pretty scary. But I just realized I sounded so sad because one, the state was shutting down, and two, I was driving the children home from our little school we had set up, because when I think about it, it was just 2 weeks ago that schools were shut down, and it was, people were thinking that was too early and it wasn't that bad, and here we are just 2 weeks later, and it's devastating. And so maybe there was some premonition of how bad it would be, but we're surviving. We're sheltering in place, basically, or as the governor likes to call it, on a pause. And so you really see the difference. I have to tell you, I did go out for a walk, and big park, and it had a trail, and people were well distanced from each other, but they closed the parks down. So I thought, well, here I am another day trying to just go for a walk, and there was a little golf cart with two coming from either side of us, and the police were there saying, well, sorry, the governor just closed, or the mayor's just closing down all the parks. So playgrounds, basketball courts, anywhere where people might gather were shut down. So all the walkers had to get in their cars, and then they were putting up barriers so you couldn't get in. So yeah, life is not as we knew it, just a month ago. We're in a different place.
Nobody should hold their breath waiting for a daughter charity tutorial about how to do exercises in your front yard. Squats and lunges by Sister Elizabeth.
There you go. I'll figure out something. I can walk around our little parking lot.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. But it's it's pretty empty, and not just not very many people out, and but I think everyone's just really trying to take care of themselves and be safe. So we just hope everyone out there who's listening is doing what they need to do, listening to their local authorities, and keeping themselves safe, and
yes, of course,
taking care of loved ones. Making sure if you're living with people who are older that you're keeping an eye on them, and not letting them, not putting them in danger by exposing them to too much. So just really be careful out there, folks.
Yes, and we are praying for you, and we're praying for all of us, really.
Yeah.
Even though we have to be in our comfort zone of being home, it is definitely out of our comfort zone to have to stay home.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had dreams of being a monastic, and I say I might have the monastic tendency, but after a couple of days, we were all like, okay, it's time to
We're good to go.
It's time to
Get outta
go. Yeah, there's a lot to do. So a lot of people to see, but we're hunkering down because that's what we should be doing right now.
Yeah. So speaking of being out of one's comfort zone, is a great culmination of our month of missionaries with Sister Franca from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to share her story with us of her missionary work. And this is the last episode, I believe, of the ones we recorded while we were in Paris last year.
It is, yeah. I don't think we have any gems left. This is the last one. We kind of held it for this series of missionaries, and this one's a little bit different because while the others were American sisters who were missionaries in countries not our own, this is from a sister who was living in Nigeria when the British and the sisters from Great Britain and from Ireland came back in the 70s to open this mission in Nigeria. So in a lot of ways, she is and speaks about being kind of the fruits of their labor. She is a sister in the province of Nigeria, which itself is only maybe 20 years old. So it took that many years for the women of Nigeria to be formed, go through the seminary, go through the normal process of becoming a daughter of charity, and reach the vocation age to be able to be leaders in their own community. And so this one's a little different in that it is the effect of what it can be like when a group of sisters come and help a community develop a province, and then see that province grow and become its own identity, its own culture, everything. But then also, they now have missions in Burkina Faso and in Ghana. And so to see them now become missionaries in other countries, it's just a really, really interesting story of the development of this province, and seeing it stem from the missionary work of the sisters in Great Britain and Ireland. So I think everyone's going to enjoy. She's a delight to listen to. And there's one little added feature. If you look in the podcast notes, I believe that we will have a little video of Sister Franca and I singing a blessing before the meal at the,
that was
the
really
meeting.
awesome.
It was a riot.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we had to sing a blessing, remember, before each meal. We did some blessing within our own culture. And so she taught me this song and we sang it together. So if you want to have a laugh, but also a little blessing, check out that video in the podcast notes. So I think we're just going to let Sister Franca tell her story.
Yep. And one last thing before we head to the interview, a preview of coming attractions. Next week, we are doing a chat, and we definitely want to hit on our vows that we just a few days ago, so gratefully, on the Feast of the Annunciation.
Yeah.
And the other, that joyous piece, and then the sad piece of losing our Superioress General, who bravely fought cancer. And so just to say a word about the passing of Sister Kathleen, who was truly a daughter of charity and a gentle soul. And so we'll say more about her in the next episode. So stay tuned.
Yeah, you definitely want to know that. She's a great blessing, beautiful woman. So, a wonderful daughter of charity. So enjoy Sister Franca, and we'll see you next week for co-host chat. Can't wait.
Woo!
Yay.
So welcome to In the Company of Charity podcast. This is Sister Elizabeth, and I am in the company of Sister Franca Edet,
yes.
Who is from the Nigerian province. And so I've asked Sister Franca if she would take some time to tell us a little bit about the Nigerian province, about her own vocation, and about the development of the province in the company. It was a missionary province to begin with.
Yes.
And so she's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So Sister Franca, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself, about when you came to the community, what that was like for you.
Okay. I am Franca. From the part of Nigeria that is now called Cross River State.
Okay.
And it has a city that is called Calabar, a beautiful little city. Why? Because the early missionaries landed there in Calabar. Calabar is a coastal city. And in fact, history says that it was the first capital of Nigeria.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but now it's no longer. The capital has moved to a more central place. Mm-hmm. Well, but that's where I come from. And the Daughters of Charity came to open the mission in Nigeria in 1963. The first sisters came from the province of Great Britain. At the time, the province of Great Britain was made up of Ireland and Great Britain itself. So, the first two sisters were from Ireland, and the third sister was from Great Britain. So there were three sisters who came in 1963.
Wow.
To start the mission in Nigeria. Well, they worked and lived in Nigeria for at least 10 years before the young Nigerian girls were invited, introduced to the life of the Daughters of Charity in Nigeria. And by God's providence, I happened to be among those first girls that joined. And there were 11 of us, though the 11 didn't come at the same time. We came at different stages. But all together, there were 11 of us to start with.
So this was sometime in the early 1970s?
This was in 1973.
Okay, wow.
73, yes, because they lived for at least 10 years before the Nigerian girls started joining.
Wow.
Yes.
And so I know that's part of the mission when we do go to a new mission, when the sisters leave for the mission at Gentes and start, that is the hope that a new province will emerge. Yes. And it does take some time, I would imagine, for those sisters to cultivate vocations. And so you were one of the very first sisters of the province. Yes. But at that point it was still part of the province of Great Britain and Ireland?
At that time, by then, it has become, Ireland had become a province by itself.
Oh, okay.
So naturally, Nigeria became part of the Irish province, while Ethiopia belonged to the British province, Nigeria belonged to the Irish province.
Okay.
So we grew up, Nigeria was made into a region, and most of our sisters at the time were Irish. We had a few from Great Britain, still working as missionaries, with the Irish sisters in Nigeria. We had a few from the Philippines.
Oh, that's interesting.
They came from mission at Gentes, so they were part of that. And then also among the early missionaries, we had one American sister, Sister Noreen Crane, who has now gone to God, and she was a special person to all of us, even though she didn't stay in the mission for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it became a region once some young women entered, so you would have gone through postulatum and then entered the seminary.
Yes.
Okay.
We did our postulatum. I entered the postulatum in 1973, and by the end of 1974, I was ready to go to the seminary.
Wow.
And had my seminary training along with my other friends, the early ones that came. So there were 11 of us. Out of that 11, we still have 10
Wow,
still,
that's
so
wonderful.
There's a good group of 10
Yes.
remained, and we grew up and kept working alongside with our Irish sisters. They were very good in the training that they gave us, good educational foundation, because they were preparing us, for the future
right.
of the province in Nigeria. So they gave us some good spiritual, human, and developmental formation to prepare us for that responsibility. So Nigeria eventually became a province in 2001.
Wow, so
It was in
not
2001.
So not quite 20 years old as a province.
No.
Yeah. So that
no.
I guess that would make sense, because
Yes.
in order to have leadership, there has to be a period of everyone has to be over 10 years vocation, or 15 years vocation to be the visitatrix or the provincial. So that makes sense that it would take that period of time. But in that time, you still were being formed and and taking on. I'm sure the province at that point was taking on more and more of a Nigerian
responsibility
flavor
and more of the Nigerian flavor.
Yeah.
By the time it became a province, a good number of the Nigerian sisters were already in leadership position, like being sister servants of the local communities, and some of them in the provincial council, and even as early as that, some of them were sent out of Nigeria to go and open mission in other places. So
outside of the country,
outside of Nigeria.
Wow.
So like they opened a mission in Ghana, which was mission in Ghana was opened in 1996.
Wow.
So, and that was it. Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So are there Irish sisters there now, or?
We have our last Irish sister only left last Saturday.
Wow.
Back to Ireland.
Oh my goodness.
Having lived in Nigeria for like 19 years.
Wow.
And she really loved it. But like she was the only one left, because once Nigeria became a province, most of our missionary sisters, they left to go and open other missions like Kenya, and other ones left and went back to Ireland, to reinsert themselves in the Irish culture and take on new missions.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
I'm always so impressed and pleased when I hear about missions that were founded by one community. I know some American sisters had gone as missionaries to Bolivia, and when the time came and the sisters were old enough in vocation and had taken on leadership positions, as you said, as sister servants, or I guess what other communities will call a local superior, although we don't use superior.
No.
But that eventually those missionaries move out to allow the province to develop its own culture and to develop in its own. I always think that's such a wonderful way that we've watched provinces grow up in over time and see that the fruits of labor are great, that these are good and fruitful and strong vocations.
Yes, and they were still there, still supporting, rejoicing in our growth, being sorrowful in our challenges, but there was always that link of communication, of trust, of helping, to develop before, because with that, even Nigeria in turn have sent Nigerian sisters back to Ireland on mission.
Wow, yeah.
Something beautiful,
that is
to look at, and have supported the mission in Kenya. Nigeria has supported the mission in Kenya.
Because that is the newest.
Yes,
it's been a little while.
Yes, those young sisters that we were watching on the interview.
Yes,
a few days ago, their first seminary directress was a Nigerian sister.
Wow, that's amazing.
And she did a great job with them.
It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful witness of, I think, the strength of our charism, and our own sense of that the charism can be lived out in so many different ways. And while it it may be fostered and nourished by one community, it's lived out within its own culture.
Yes.
That it doesn't take on predominantly the culture of its founders,
No, not really.
But it takes on the culture of
Yes.
the
Kind of
the charisma.
inculturated. The
you know,
charism is
founders,
one. You know,
yeah.
the culture of the charism or the culture of the company is the same.
It's the same.
That is why when
Yeah.
you see Daughters of Charity, they move from one culture to another, and we are assembling like here in the mother house. There's a very common thread,
Exactly.
that goes
Yeah.
through our DNA, as we call it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's beautiful. It's
Yes,
absolutely amazing.
yes.
And when we do come together, you can feel it right away. It's, even though you may never have met, we had never met. We just
No.
simply sat beside each other.
Yes.
And yet we had connections
Yes, yes,
through
yes.
mutual priests
Friends,
and friends
yes,
we knew.
yes.
But the charism, the sense of who we are as daughters of St. Vincent, daughters of St. Louise, daughters of charity, and the charism of St. Vincent that unites us and binds us for life, really. Yeah. So how are vocations in Nigeria? We hear a lot about, in African countries and Asian countries that vocations are booming.
Yes.
Of course, in the Western world, in the United States and Great Britain, not so much. Although we're certainly working with women. But tell us about vocations in Nigeria
the
now.
vocation is there in Nigeria, for us in the international congregations, we have our method, of selecting and receiving and formation, that helps us to be able to mix the young ones that come from different places. And I suppose the tradition of the company that has given us that, well-structured system of formation also helps in the way that we are growing, helping to grow the young people in their vocation. Right now in Nigeria, we'll say we have like 156 sisters,
Okay.
all Nigerians.
Yes.
Up to last week, we were 157, but one of the last Irish sisters that she has gone back, so we are now 156. And then outside of that 156, we have 5 seminary sisters.
Oh, wonderful.
And we have 7 postulants.
That's great.
Now our postulancy has been moved to Ghana, so that it gives the Ghanaian girls the opportunity to do the postulancy in their country.
Yes.
And we are hoping that we will get vocation coming from Burkina Faso, another mission that was opened from Nigeria. So if we have vocation from Burkina Faso, they won't have to travel across West Africa to get to Nigeria. At least they can move from Burkina Faso to Ghana and do their postulancy there and get used to the situation before they make another journey to Nigeria to do their seminary.
So the seminary is in Nigeria.
Yes, the seminary is still in Nigeria.
And so how do you find the mix of culture?
Even in Nigeria, it's quite a big country and people coming from different cultures. But when we have a common sense of mission, a common sense of the charism, that is what binds us.
Yes,
and as our constitution says, the gifts and the difference that we get, the diversity, is to be seen as a form of gift.
Yes.
Not something that divides us, but something that strengthens us. So based on that knowledge, we try to build the community with, that sense of love, that sense, the sense of, God-given gifts that binds humanity together and not what separates us.
Yes.
The challenges are there. The challenges are always there, but, we find ways of processing the challenges. We find ways of absorbing the challenges, trying to recognize what challenges us, and then we build up from there. We reconcile. You know,
Yes,
it's like we heal, we reconcile, we move on.
Yeah.
Because we have one common goal. The goal that is to be out there for the service of those who are in need.
Yes.
So when there is that call to look out for those who are in need of your help, of your assistance, you have little time to be thinking about yourself and being sorry for yourself.
That's right. Yeah, we learned that very quickly. Very quickly. You're right. You know, I asked the question too because you know, in the United States, which is a big country,
Yes.
there are cultural differences between
Yes.
someone who comes from the Northeast and someone who comes from the Southeast, or
Yes.
someone who's from the Southwest,
Yes.
and you know, we kind of laugh at ourselves even when we realize those differences are there, like what you eat for Thanksgiving dinner. That in the end, those are not the things that we need to spend a lot of time on. It's what unites us
Yes.
in our understanding of the incarnation of Christ in those who are poor and focused on our mission. So I agree. We can kind of laugh at ourselves
Yes.
sometimes when you think about the things that we worry about, and yet the charism continues through the centuries,
I know.
you know, to unite us. And you know, a daughter of charity is a daughter of charity, no matter where she is.
Yes.
You know, I've always been so amazed that you can go into a house in pretty much any country and find the same artwork.
I know.
You know, you find the same pictures of St. Vincent and
Yes.
St. Louise. You find the pictures of our current Superior General and Superior General. And that's so, something as simple as that tells
Yes.
us that we're home.
I know.
You know, that we are in a house that we'll be
Yes.
welcomed in. And,
Yes.
and yeah, so you're right. The differences can really begin to disappear.
Yes.
But initially, they can be a little hard to deal
Oh,
with.
yeah, it's true. Very
So
true.
can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of works that are in Nigeria, like about the works of
Well,
Nigeria?
Nigeria is a growing province, still with a
Still?
lot of young people, and I can call it a developing country. So because of that, the church is taking on a lot of responsibility, you know, to provide for the basic needs, you know, of the common people.
Yes.
Because if we were waiting for the government to take on these responsibilities, some people would never have known what it is to be educated or know what it is to get to a good hospital and get treated. So the church takes a lot of responsibility in that area, the Catholic Church and even other missionary churches, you know. So the sisters are still working in schools. We have great diversity of mission in Nigeria, but everything is focused on the service of people who are poor. So like we work in hospitals, not very big hospitals,
Right.
you know, and we work in schools. We have schools from nursery education up to secondary education, and a combination of inclusive schools, you know, for children who have some form of disabilities.
Oh, okay.
Because without that, those children would be hidden somewhere in their family and they won't ever have an opportunity of being in the school. So some of our schools are inclusive schools where we admit children with disabilities and, you know, children that, let me call them normal in inverted commas, so they study, they learn side by side each other.
So we would
And
call
we
that
have
mainstreaming in the United
mainstreaming,
States.
yes, yeah, we mainstream. And in some schools we mainstream children with hearing impairment with normal children in bed. So they are learning together, really learning side by side. So where you have to teach the children with hearing impairment sign language, the regular children learn the sign language in order to be able to communicate with the children who are hearing impaired, because they are within the same classroom system. We also have primary health care, which is very, very important. Sisters who have been trained in tropical health and primary health care. So they just do rural work.
Okay.
They do mobile clinics, you know, in the rural areas. They can just, every hospital that we have a section of primary health care linked to it, so that the sisters who leave in the morning in their vehicle and go out to the villages to do their primary care, educate pregnant women, teach children, teach married women, you know, in the families. Like sometimes they can meet in the church, they can meet under a tree, they can meet in a school hall just to teach. So where there is serious ailment, they are now referred to the hospital where they get their main treatments. We also have works, you know, like since this whole incident of HIV, you know, came in, you know, so the sisters are very, very involved in that. Most of our hospitals will have good section, you know, dedicated for the treatment of people with HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis. And in those hospitals, I must say we have had great support from our sisters of the United States, coming from the Seton Institute.
Yes,
you know.
I'm glad to hear that.
Great
I was going to ask, because I know
great assistance
that we try to be
great assistance we have had to support the development of that kind of work. And what else do we do? We work on what we call the community-based rehabilitation. Some children with physical handicap or children with learning disabilities, children who are autistic or have any form of disability that are not living in the city, may not have good access to education.
And probably wouldn't be able to be mainstream.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for that reason, the T sisters are very much involved with what we call the community-based rehabilitation. Yes, I personally worked on that for quite a long time, you know, and I had skills, you know. Basically, I'm trained as a teacher of the deaf. So in the early days, I had the opportunity of working with agencies from Germany and Netherlands. So I got a lot of administrative training and training on how to train other people. So I kind of became a pioneer trainer, you know. Being
that's
one
wonderful.
of the pioneer sisters, I also was a pioneer trainer of people. Sometimes we gather catechists together and teach them in the rural area.
I was going to ask about parish work.
Recognize children with disabilities, know how to advise the parents, know how to make referral and things. So in that way, we were collaborating with the local church. You know? So like the catechists now did not just have a pastoral responsibility, they also have some sense of responsibility on how to identify children with disabilities and to be able to refer them. Something that was a little bit professional, but you teach it to them, you bring it to them down to their level of understanding, and then help them. And they were really great and excited.
That's
and
beautiful.
In that way, we had great collaboration with the church.
Which is really important
in the service of persons.
So a lot of the works are very similar to what you'd find a Daughter of Charity doing in other places. But the support, as you say, of the local church, of Seton Institute, I'm just glad to hear that. That's important. It's important for us as well. Nobody does this by themselves, that's for sure. So what would you, to kind of wrap up some of this, because I think it's fascinating to hear about the development in that the province is independent province, is only 20 years old. Some beautiful works with 150 or so, 160 sisters. That's a lot of work for a group of women to do. What would be your hopes for the province?
Well, my hope with the province is that, you know, no matter what it is, that we will not lose our focus on identifying the main services, you know, for the poor, and invest a lot on the sisters' formation spiritually and let me say academically, to give them the skills that will help them to respond well to the needs of the poor. Because as we grow, times are changing, you know.
Yes.
The forms of the different forms of poverty is also changing. So as it comes, that we will have the alertness to identify that this is where we are called to be, and not have this temptation, you know, of moving away, because sometimes there is a temptation.
Absolutely.
You could be invited by a bishop, you know, to come and head a big school, head a big hospital for
Right.
the diocese, maybe work in the secretariat.
Yes,
for
I was
the
just going to
bishop
say,
and
yes,
things
yeah,
like that.
we resist it
But
all the time.
we keep resisting. Sometimes
Yeah.
you get into trouble with bishops just for resisting or for telling them that no, there are other people who can do that work
Right,
well. We
right.
concentrate on the poor. So I do feel that, you know, that primitive spirit of the company, of being paying great attention to the needs of the poor, identifying the needs of the poor, being able to work with people who live in the margin. You know, we talk about people living in the periphery, that will continue to work in partnership with those people. And since, you know, like we can say vocation is booming, but now there are many opportunities
For women,
in
yes.
Nigeria, for
Yeah.
women in African countries. So you don't have the vocation as much as possible. So we could also be thinking of the future through collaboration. As we work with our lay staff, we try, you know, to share our charism with them, so that they will always be there as a source of support to work with us, you know, to lead. And I must say, it's something like it's happening all the time. You
Yeah.
see it with all our staff. Sometimes it happens unintentionally, but we have to begin to create an intentional way of training and passing on our own charism to our lay staff, so that we will all be working on the same page and speaking the same language as far as serving people who are poor is concerned.
Yeah, those are some of the same desires and the same, I think, goals and hopes that every province has. But, you know, as we were saying initially, each province has its own challenges,
Yes.
whether that be culture or region or language or. But so we'll keep the province of Nigeria in
Thank
prayer.
you very much.
Keep you
Thank
specifically
you.
in prayer.
Thank
It's been
you.
so
Thank
delightful
you.
to
Yes,
share table space with you
Yes.
during this session,
Yes.
and to have you on our podcast.
Yes.
This has been In the Company of Charity podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.